Welcome to the Storied Outdoors. My name is Brian Gill. I am joined, as always, by my co-host and good friend, Brad Hill. Today we have a special guest. He's an avid member of the Alabama fly fishing community, Andre Davis. He's an avid outdoorsman who finds peace and restoration in the demonstrative power of God's nature. He's a proud big brother, uncle, son, and husband. Andre has spent a lifetime outdoors, hunting, fishing, hiking, building, playing music, and teaching. He's married to a sixth grade teacher. His household is full of youth and a joyful expectation of watching them grow up, watching his kids grow up to be better than themselves. That's Andre said that. Andre has a nonprofit called Skillz and Gills, where kids are taught the basics of fly fishing, how to set up a rig, fly casting, all about waterways, ecosystems, conservation, and fish handling. He's a staple in the Alabama fly fishing community. He's a mentor with the Mayfly Project. He's an avid fly tyer and a friend of the show. Many of you may be surprised to know that Andre is also an excellent writer and storyteller. I've had the privilege of reading several of his personal essays, and I'm looking forward to talking about those later on in the show. If some of those who have been following the show for a while may remember we had Andre on for one of the snippets, really quick stories at the International Fly Fishing Film Festival at the Cahaba Brewery in Birmingham last year. But we wanted to continue this conversation, extend it to a full episode this year. So, Andre, welcome back to the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me again.
Yeah, Andre, we were laughing about just kind of remembering that story of you're traveling for work, you find yourself fishing in New York and a squirrel follows you around it, but it's really somebody dressed up in an outfit following you around. What a strange world where we find ourselves living in, friend.
Oh yeah, I showed up there thinking I was going to be the strange one.
No,
Walking around there
with a
with the
fly
fly
rod.
rod and everything. Yeah.
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 Little did I know.
I love you. You're repping the hat, man. Appreciate that, brother.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. Hey,
yeah, looking good.
I
If you're,
saw that with some bass the other day.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Oh yeah.
If you're watching on
Yeah.
YouTube, man, you're seeing it. But if you're not watching on YouTube, you're missing out tonight. He's got the hat on, the Storied Outdoors hat, and yeah, you've been catching some fish. That's awesome.
Yeah. This hat, it followed me. Actually, I've been to all four corners of the country with this hat. It's seen
Nice.
everything from Everglades and Key West to New York and Maine. We went out to LA last year. And just this 2 years ago now, December 2 years ago, and then just this last year, all the way up to Seattle,
Oh, awesome.
Kalispell, Montana,
Oh
all the way.
man, that's where I want to be.
It's broke in, y'all.
Man, I love it.
I was telling somebody the other day, like if something happens to my wife and my kids are out of school and they got careers, you ain't got to wonder where Brad is. He's in the mountains somewhere. He's probably
That's
in
right.
Montana.
The mountains are
Mhm.
calling.
The mountains are
Mhm.
calling. I don't want to see mountains, Gandalf. Oh man, Andre, it's been a while since the Fly Fishing Film Festival, and we only had, like we said, a little short snippet there, right? Just a brief story, a really entertaining story. You just remind us, where did you grow up, Andre?
Yeah, yeah. So I grew up kind of in and around Jefferson City, Missouri. If I told you the little towns I lived in, you'd have no idea what I was talking about. But yeah, yeah, I did. A lot of my family, we grew up in really small little areas around there, and then moved into Columbia, Missouri, and then Jefferson City, Missouri as well. And so yeah, I spent all of my life until my late 20s in Missouri, and then I moved down
Oh,
here to Birmingham.
that's awesome. So, I mean, obviously, as we introduced you, man, there's a lot of fly casting and fly tying and fly fishing. It's not an incredibly I mean, I think it's growing in popularity. I think we would all agree that it's growing in popularity. I mean, I think just the other day I was watching, watching television and just general cable. There's a free fly commercial with a guy fly fishing.
Yeah.
It's like used to you would rarely see fly fishing on TV, or especially not portrayed in commercials. So it's getting more commercialized. More people are doing it, but it hasn't always been that way. It's been
Yeah.
and it's still pretty niche of a sport, like especially in the South down here, where everybody's like, you can fly fish down here. I was like, boy, man, you're
Hmm.
missing out. There's so much you can catch with a fly
Every
rod.
everything they every time they see it, it's like they got trout in there.
Yeah,
That's right.
exactly. Same
I know it.
question. They got
Yep.
trout in there? No, but they got bass and brim.
Yep.
But yeah. So how did you get into fly fishing?
Yeah. That's another funny story, actually. So I was forced into it against my will, quite frankly, and
You went kicking and
Just
screaming.
like anything, just like anything in life.
I kind of did. Yeah, I was traveling for work. The big project I've been on the last 3 years, all the travel everyone has kind of seen in the Alabama Forum, and we were in Baltimore at the time, and so it went from like we're going to go up there and do a 2 week thing, which we did do. Then we got stationed back up there, and that became, hey, a couple more weeks. Let's figure this whole thing out to 6 weeks. It was kind of a little bit more of a permanent stationing up there. So while we were up there doing that, I did what I naturally do. I grew up my whole life fishing, very, very different fishing. Growing up on the Missouri and the Mississippi rivers like that, it's more mud than it is water, and so you're throwing bait and a lot of conventional fishing, and you're catching catfish and jack salmon and, all this kind of stuff. For those who don't know, it's funny. I was in my 30s before I realized what jack salmon was. It's walleye. But yeah,
There you
we
go.
always called it that. I had no idea. I just knew it was really, really nice with hot sauce. But but I went in and I said, all right, well, if I'm stuck here, I'm fishing. And so I went and I did what we all do. I Googled, and there's a place called Tochterman's Fly. It's not a fly shop, it's bait and tackle. And I associate it with fly now. So I always got to catch myself calling them that. But it's one of the oldest continually operating tackle shops in the country. And I didn't know that at
Wow.
the time either.
What was
And
that
so
called
I
again?
walk in, Tochterman's,
Tochterman's.
Tochtermans, if I ever remembered that right.
Oh, that's cool.
And super duper cool spot. It's in Fells Point, right there outside of the inner harbor of Baltimore. So you walk over there, really cool old town.
The
I knew I
Haba.
was back in the middle of in the Haba. That's it. I knew I was in the middle of the city because like everybody's bumper had this little rubber pad over it because none of them can parallel park, so they just bounce off each other. That's a true story. That's real. I
Oh
loved it to
wow.
death. Oh yeah, I knew right away when I saw it too, and just had to giggle to myself for getting that shop. And they have all of their different rods arched up, so you walk under this canopy of rods. Super duper cool old wood counter, and I start talking to them, and I tell them that I wanted a bait caster, and said, hey, I want to get into any kind of fishing I can, maybe even try some salt while I'm here. Why not? But I'm gonna want a bait caster to do it. And yeah, so he kind of looks at me and he's more or less like, yeah, I want to show you something else instead. And I'm like, well, okay, but I feel like I asked you for a bait caster. So, and he says, see, he kind of waves
Bit
me behind the counter.
after.
And yeah, I mean, and he waves me behind the counter, and there's a little door, not exactly what you think. This is the little door that goes to the back hallway. And I'm thinking, why is he pulling me back here? There's this really narrow hallway and these wood steps, and they're much steeper than they are long. And before I know it, I'm kind of in this little passageway, and this Narnia feel to it, very much so, because as I'm going up it, you can see kind of at the landing of it all these Amazon boxes and all this stuff unpacked, and boxes kind of stacked in boxes. Someone needed to take that trash out later in the day. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in just the back area, okay, but it starts to get, now I'm seeing cherry wood, and everything's getting really pretty and really handmade really fast. We summit those stairs, and I turn right, and still to this day, it's one of the prettier fly shops I've ever been in.
Wow.
And the main level looked exactly like what it should look, being one of the oldest tackle shops. Guys coming in there for red worms is what they were famous for. It's what their family started it doing. And so it's all salt water, so it's a little bit rough and tumble. It's what you want it to be. It's everything you want something to be like that on the harbor. But upstairs, I didn't want to touch anything.
Hmm.
I was like, I do not know what I just walked into. And he's just got this little smirk on his face. Come to find out, his name is Tony. He's Tony Tochterman. He is, I think it was either his dad or it might have been his granddad who started it, but they've held it in the family the whole way down. I had no
Wow.
idea who he was. I had no context. Oh, yeah. And he shows me around. Long story short, I end up leaving with the 5 weight fly rod, little TFO, black label NXT. I still have it, still fish it. And some of the guys will go downstairs and we're all talking and sharing stories. I ended up with this little group of folks. They take me out in the back alley and they taught me how to do what I would later learn was a roll cast. And from there, we end up going all the way down to Fells Point, which is, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 blocks farther down to where you actually get back to the water. Now we're right there in Inner Harbor. And like, if you've never been to Inner Harbor in Baltimore, like it's surrounded by, very expensive per plate restaurants, 50, 60, $100, whatever it is. It's fancy is the point. And, here I am trying to figure out this roll cast and I get it out there and little do you know, there's stripers in there. I think they call them rock bass.
Oh
And,
boy. Oh, okay.
oh yeah, yeah. And they're just everywhere. So I rolled it out there, ended up setting into one of them. Everybody's yelling, strip set, strip set, strip set. I didn't know what a
I don't
strip set
know.
was,
What is
man.
that?
I
I
have
just
no
got the
idea.
rod.
So I did what any reasonable person would do, and I turned around and started running. And I just ran and I towed that joker up to the landing, and it's all like cobblestone and brick and stuff up there. It looks real pretty and all that, but not the kind of thing you want to drag a fish onto. And but that's what I did. I towed that joker onto the ground,
You didn't
and
lose
that was
it.
the first fish. That's the
That,
first fish I ever caught, and that's how
Yeah.
that went. And from there, what's funny is one that's a cool first fish and a ridiculous thing to happen, and and then I come to find out who Tony was, and we kept talking the more I was there, and I started to kind of figure out really just the roll cast and kind of some water tension cast, and I didn't know what those were. I didn't have those names then at that point. But the crazy thing about that story, I think, with regard to the community, is that was only 2 years ago,
wow,
two and some change now, yeah. And
Ah,
so I've not been in it long, and
yeah.
man, but you
you
jumped
know,
in with both feet though.
yeah, and as we keep talking tonight, I'll tell you more about why that part is, because I don't know that it was terribly dissimilar. I had somebody who turned out to be a really wise, very kind, very loving person. In this case, that I really didn't. I had no idea. The grandeur of the person with
Hmm.
whom I was speaking and who was guiding me towards. He was guiding me towards something I didn't know I needed.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And once I found it, despite the fact that I made a fool out of myself, it didn't take away from its redeeming power and its
Hmm.
ability to bring joy into my life and others people's lives. And so it would end up becoming something, a vehicle through which I would try to continue to bring joy to others. I try to continue to find the fullness of the power in it. And I haven't reached its limit yet. And so I continue on, but that's how that started.
Man,
That's great, man. Love it.
love that. So, I mean, you kind of alluded to it just a second. You give a lot of your time to helping others. Even even your wife. I mean, she's a school teacher. She helps others.
Yeah.
Seems like that seems to be um a value in your family. Helping kids. Especially with Skills and Gills, your nonprofit. Where did that come from? Like, what is the driving force behind that?
Yeah. Well, my wife, her name is Shanda, and she is, you know, she's she's just a beautiful gift to me, to the students that she teaches. She teaches at a private Christian school, which oftentimes can kind of ring true to fancy.
Mhm.
She teaches in the lower socioeconomic demographic. These kids, are truly kids in need in a lot of cases, not all, but more so than you would think when you hear private school.
Hmm.
And and that's just her heart. She wouldn't have it any other way. She's a magnificent teacher. She's gotten the opportunities to be able to do, to teach rather anywhere she wants, but that's where she wants to be.
Mhm.
So as I, as she and I have kind of walked through it, really, I think for me, it started, and if it's all right, it's kind of a bigger story, if that's all right. I'll
Yeah.
kind of let into that. But, my parents and grandparents, if they were here on this call, they would tell you, um, even as a kid, the story I get from my mom and grandmother a lot is, when my younger sister Stephanie Ann was born, she's 2.5 years younger than I am. I used to stand at her crib and just watch her be a baby, just watch her just be who she is, and was just kind of enamored by that. And so I've got two other siblings under me, and it's the same is true with them. I was much older by that point. I'd have another sister who was 7 years younger than me, and a brother who's 9 years younger than me. And same thing was true. The greatest joys of my life that I can think of outside of my marriage were with my siblings.
Mm.
And as they become adults, they are also the people to whom I look up. So I look up to all of them, not only just as a source of joy and not on account of anything that I've done, but because of who, through their own choices and through their own walk with Christ, who they have become. I hold that in a place of extremely high honor to be their brother. And I knew really early on, and I don't know why in particular it was to have a son, but that I wanted to be a dad to a little boy. And I grew up not only in a house full of women, but I grew up with my mother, two sisters, my stepfather. My folks, split when I was pretty young, and but then my dad has five sisters, and as my mom and my grandma and my aunt. I have an uncle, but you can see we were pretty outnumbered, the guys.
Man, I feel you
and
there, man. I feel you.
and I loved it, and I still love it. But there was something that had a longing in me to be a dad to a little boy, and um, so I don't know, but that's always been a really persistent calling on my heart. And later in life, I would, of course, find myself married, and unfortunately, my wife and I lost our kiddo,
Mm.
and so that was, of course, an incredible trial for us. And I you would imagine I kind of had this longing for a goal for most of my life, and then I would get to a place where um, I had that experience, and I suppose I should say my father at one point told me, son, no matter what else, no matter where this all goes, just know that you're always going to continue to be a father. That title can't be taken away from you.
Mm.
But it did leave a space in my heart, and a lot of what I do and wanting to give to others, wanting particularly a lot of that to be really circled around taking care of youth, and young folks, comes from that same energy. God put that in my heart really, really early on, like a kid myself, like an actual kid, little kid,
Hmm.
myself. And I never could explain it, where that all came from. Um, so that drive was always there, but as you would guess, of course, and um, and fully expected to all the way into that. So I may kind of leave some of that part of my story right there, if that's all right with you all. But I will say that that's where a lot of that desire and that energy and that um, pouring out of my heart into others and into kids, that's where that comes from.
Mm.
You're right. So having Skills and Gills, the Mayfly Project, the joy of what my wife does. Even then, like a couple years ago, well, Brad, you'll be happy to know I play guitar as well. I used to travel with church, and I had a band.
Nice.
It wasn't my band, but I was in the band, and it's called Set Apart. And
Cool, man.
with my church back in Jeff City, and we used to travel around. I went to a lot of other countries and played, but that band started by starting a band for the youth group.
Hmm.
They didn't have their own deal, and back in the '90s, it was a bit of a different thing. Y'all might know
Oh, I
that
remember.
what kind of music you could play and where, and a lot of church would split based on changing musical styles and all that
Playing
kind
that
of. I mean,
devil music.
yes, it was a big deal. And so to do that and to start that up with a youth band was, of course, also a really big deal. Luckily, we had a very, very supportive pastor, Brother Monty. Hello. Do you get a better name than that?
Monty.
Brother,
That's awesome.
but he was in full support of that, and so even in that sense of watching them come into their own, finding their own voice in worship, which takes all kinds of forms of formats, right? But for me, one way that I've really found an avenue and a doorway to commune with God is through music.
Mm.
It's one of the few things that slows me down, and fly not necessarily fly fishing. I can still get pretty rambunctious with that, but fly casting and fly tying, you can't get rambunctious. The activity itself won't allow it.
Yeah.
Right? There's no space for that,
Can't force it.
and that's right. You cannot force it. Just having extra energy, won't do you any favors. It's not going to
Mm.
help. You have to surrender to it. You have to be obedient to the process. You have to allow it to be what it is to get the very best out of it. I'm not saying there can't be another way, but if you want to have a chance of getting the best out of it, you're going to have to surrender to it a little bit. At least someone with my personality does. I'll speak for myself. But and that's part of the goodness of dealing with kids too. When I came back from Baltimore, I was at home and I kind of worked around in some of the different rivers up there, the Savage and the Patuxent and the Gunpowder, and boy, I can't remember all of them, but I kind of found my way up through a lot of that area. And I came home and I wanted to know, okay, how can I keep this rolling? What can I do? So again, I Googled it. What comes up right away, here, the first thing that popped up was Orvis. And I would end up finding Rob and team, but that came a little bit later. And so they came up first. And lo and behold, I met Mr. Parker Young, who's also in the group. I owe so very much of my place in this journey and in that community to Parker. He is a gift to that community and so many other people, and he would never say it. Where I am wildly extroverted, he has a quieter soul, and he is just a wonderful friend. And I love all of the qualities about him. So, but I'm going to speak on his behalf and admonish him a little bit, or speak well of him a little bit here. And just to say that he brought me in to do some volunteering there with the 101, and he said, "Hey, we want to do some fly tying." I had done a little bit up in Baltimore, got a few things under my belt, and then he said, "How about fly casting?" Ooh, I don't know, man. That could get dangerous. I don't know. You might not. What is your insurance deductible here at the Orvis store in Birmingham? I don't know what they've got for you all, but you might want to make some calls and up it. And but what I found really quickly was what happens is a lot of times folks get out there and they want to do the fly casting and they'll have their kiddos with them. Happens on Saturday mornings and stuff like that. And a lot of teachers and even parents and stuff aren't sure if the kids can do it and or are afraid to have them out there and throwing it around. That, hey, you're going to hit the person next to you. You might hit the instructor, these kind of things. Well, man, I fell in love with that so fast that I gravitated towards those kids. I made it. I mean, I just took that fear and I just made it a goal. And I said, all right, here's the deal. I'm going to teach you the principles. I'm going to stand over here and I want you to hit me. I bet you can do it. I want you to, because I know that you can. Get it on over here. I bet your dad couldn't do it, and watch him get down to it. And from there, a lot of parents started asking, "Hey, would I work with their kid?" And I didn't want to start charging anybody or deal with that. I just wanted their kids to have a chance. And so I started an Instagram page and called it Skillz and Gills, and that was a way for them to communicate with me and started meeting up with them. And that's it. That's how it happened.
I love that.
Gosh, I love that.
Yeah, there is a joy to seeing somebody. Brian, I think you call it like early success. You see somebody get some success.
Yeah.
Early, or they figure something out, or sort of that light bulb goes off when they feel. They see that loop in the fly line like it's supposed to that first time. You're like, oh, that's how you do it. Like that is so rewarding. So I can certainly resonate with that. And having taught just a few folks that were interested in fly fishing, for them to grasp that first roll cast or whatever. I use it once a year. I try to take some guys from church that are interested in fly fishing and actually take them up, into the mountains to experience like trout fishing, in Gatlinburg. It's probably a good spot for us to go and just to see them make those connections is really, really, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
What kind of work do you do, Andre? You know, I know you travel a lot for work. What kind of work do you that takes you all over?
Yeah, nowadays I run operations for our national team, and so what I do in a nutshell, if I start by saying I run a security firm, people think like bodyguards, but what but what I do is corporatized security. So think burglary panels,
Yeah.
access control to doorways and that sort of thing,
Hmm.
CCTV camera systems, fire alarm control panels, which is how I got into it. Um, and then physical and mechanical locksmithing as well.
Hmm.
And
Oh, that's
so,
cool.
what takes me all around the country, yeah, are two of our bigger national accounts, which are Verizon and then Chick fil A.
Hmm.
And
Nice.
so, the big one that took me around for the big 3 year program, starting, well, it didn't actually start in Baltimore, just the fishing portion of it did, but is the Chick fil A account. So, we went in and kind of did it's not a remodel, but an update to kind of say it in summary, of the systems
That's
for
neat.
all of the Chick fil A's in the country. Yeah.
Super neat. And that takes you all over.
Oh yeah.
So you get to fish on all these trips. You like kind of always kind of pack your rod just in case, kind of a scenario.
Yeah, it's like we joke about now all the time. It's hey man, if I cross over a bridge and there's water under it, I got to look at it. I got to see if there's something in it. It's the same thing. And I mean, that was one of the other gifts about fly fishing is, it packs down to, you know, so if I'd have got that bait caster and it's like a lot of them I have, it's a big old one piece rod. Good luck putting that in a work
Hmm.
truck that's full of materials you need to go out there and get the
That's right.
job done. But the fly rod you
The
can put
pocket,
behind the truck seat.
the pocket fisherman.
The Pope Hill pocket fisherman? Yeah, dude. Yeah, son. Not only that, but I've got, and actually, I'll have to send you all that. But my coworker who came with me on all those trips, his name is Corey. He's a younger guy, and he took over the project and now runs it, and just did a wonderful job with it. It was cool to get to watch him grow into that role. It was his first project ever, and it was a 3 year tenured project
Wow.
with one of the biggest service companies in the world, and food service in particular. But yeah, I got him those what do you call it? Dock Demon. Got him a Dock Demon, and it was a purple one, and I got myself a pink one, and we would run around and try to fish with those at the beginning of the thing,
Oh, that's
and
so funny.
you'd be
Doc
shocked what you
Demon.
can do with the Dock Demon now. But
Hey,
I've
I've
seen
caught
some
some.
YouTube videos with some guys that got like a little Barbie. I love it. They got like a little Barbie, like Zebco 33, like little, fishing rod or whatever. And I saw
yeah,
one guy in a kayak catch like a monster fish, on one of those things. That little
oh
thing
yeah,
was bent into like a U shape, but it never broke. I was
It
like,
never
that thing's
broke.
fixing to snap
nope,
right in that.
nope.
No, it didn't. I was super impressed. So yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised at all what you could do with those little pink things. Don't
We
look down on them.
we go
They don't know
fishing
when to
on
quit.
we go fishing at our the place we have in Lake Gunnersville, and my daughter always has her Elsa rod.
Yeah.
Oh
And
yeah,
man, if we hook into a catfish, it's on. I mean,
yeah.
it
Oh
is so much
Yes.
fun.
Yes.
yeah.
What's it like to go? I mean, you go into these new places and you get to like kind of explore.
Mhm.
I mean, do you read up before you go, or or is it? I mean, I know that's a great challenge. It's so much fun because you're going into new water. I've experienced that on a small level, but I don't travel on the regular like you do. But and I'm sure that gives you something to look forward to in a new place where you're going to work. What's that? Talk about that a little bit. New place, new fish, new water.
Yeah, I mean that's the deal. It's like 90% of it, and I know we were talking a little bit about this earlier, but it's not always what it looks like. Social media has a way of letting everybody interpret the photo, and the truth of what everyone's seeing when I'm out there like that. So those installations, well, let me say this: if you've ever been into a Chick Fil A, instead of only, I mean, the drive-through tells you enough, but if you've ever been in one, it's like a hive of bees in there. I mean,
Hmm.
so if you got when we're doing these systems, not only do we have to do the device, but we have to rewire it. There's no chance you're putting up ladders in an active open Chick Fil A. It's not going to happen. So we work at night,
Yeah.
Mm.
and so the reality is two things. One, most of what I see at night, and I see
Mm.
from a highway, because a lot of these stores, unless we're in the metro area, we're going to every Chick-fil-A they have, even in every little town. And so a lot of times we'll work overnight, depending on what it takes, 8, 10 hours, on a site, have 8 hours to the next location. So then we either got a choice. You can go to sleep for a few hours and then drive 8 hours and then work again that next night, or you can go ahead and stay up and fish sunrise and then drive your 8 hours and work that next night. Or
Hmm.
you can leave straight from there and drive 8 hours and try to get some rest when you
Wow.
get there. And that's your choices. And so a lot of what we see, in nowadays, and this is something I tell people a lot when they talk about the travel, and don't get me wrong, it's not that you don't ever get to see anything cool, but one thing that there's two things. One is the schedule, is not for everybody. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think any physical body should probably be put through that, but it's not. A lot of people they wouldn't have made it past the first state, but and that's okay. You shouldn't be able to, but the other reality is, man, I say this all the time, is unfortunately, unlike 20 something years ago, you could, airdrop me into a city and take the blindfold off and looking around by the character of it, certain landmarks, I could tell you where I was.
Hmm.
Nowadays, especially going to something like a Chick-fil-A in particular, they tend to be in the little business area on some kind of a, business road, and it all looks the same. If you drop me there, you're going to take that blindfold off. I'm going to see a TJ Maxx, a Home Depot, a Chick-fil-A, and a Verizon. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter where in the country you go. That's what I'm going to look at.
You
Right.
know you're
And
in Alabama if you see a Dollar General and a
and a
Jack's, though.
Dollar General, yeah, son,
And
that's
a
it.
Jax.
They just, yeah, man. They just took they started doing the bologna sandwich again.
Oh, I saw that.
This
Yeah,
episode brought to you
it's a
by
guilty,
Jax.
it's a guilty pleasure, man. I can't help myself, but
So good. So
it's
good.
just, yeah, so bad for you. It hurts so good,
They're so good.
It just,
Was it
it does.
Brian? Was it Brian? You say no morning fishing trip is complete without a stop by Jack's to
You,
get some biscuits.
you got to stop at Jack's.
Gotta,
You got to
You
gotta
going
do
on
it.
the
stop.
water, you got to stop at
It's,
Jack's.
I mean, listen, but that is the deal about it. So when we're out there like that, we're making a very active choice to go out and explore. Now, sometimes you're in Metro and we'll have 10, 15 stores, so we're going to be in that area for as many as 8 to 10 days. Now that's different. Then you get a little bit of playtime built in. But when we're traveling like that, we also work 7 days a week.
Mhm.
When you're on the road, go ahead and get out there and make the money, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not out there to spend money and play. You're out there to make money, and so you got to do both. That's the reality. That's the
Mm-hmm.
challenge of it. But
So you're saying you're tired and exhausted when you're hitting these streams?
you would think not as much as you would think. So yeah, it's I have you should. I wish Corey was on here. He'll tell you. First time that he went on a big one like that with me, he went to Jacksonville. We had done a site here in Alabama, finishing up the local ones here because we started here, so we were on kind of home base. We could learn, what the project was going to be, what it was going to require before we hit the road. Anyway, the next stop was Jacksonville, and when we got down there, we hit that first store, did that job overnight. Next morning, we're driving as the sun's coming up. We're driving from East Jacksonville down to Mandarin, which is like southwest of the main city, and like he gets into the truck, he loaded the last ladder on top. He gets in, closes the door. I put on some drum and bass music, and down the highway we go, and he's just looking at me. And Corey's 15 years younger than me, and he was like, "What? What is this? What is your deal?" He's,
Andre's hype. He's hype.
dude, yeah. God bless my wife because I stay on 11 like all the time, full time Spinal Tap.
Turn it up to 11.
That's so true. I mean, that's exactly how I see you. Every time you're either at a fly fishing thing or we see you, out and about doing other fly fishing things, it's like Andre's always on. I love it. I love it. You always
Yeah,
know what you're
all the
gonna
time.
get.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do are you just like Wade Blevins? You're driving by, you're driving over a bridge and your car has got this problem where it slows down a little bit so you can look at the water.
Yeah,
Like
mine does have that.
my
Yeah.
Jeep has that problem. My old Wrangler, man, it's like the brakes automatically engage. I just gotta like lean over and look and see what it looks
Yeah.
like down there.
Yeah. Yeah. I got that ABS system, it's got that already up, automated river braking system, yeah. Yeah. Sure enough.
That's good, man.
Man, Andre, I had the privilege of reading some of your essays, and man, I love the way that you reflect and the way that you tell stories and the way that you view the world through the pen. Um, what what is it about writing and reflecting that connects with you so well?
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of, I think for as much as I talk, which is constantly, including when nobody's around, I don't need an audience. I enjoy one, but it's not required for sure. The truth is that finding someone who is not only willing, I've been blessed to find people throughout life who are willing, but um, a lot of parts of my story has been very difficult.
Hmm.
And I thank God that I've been blessed with a sense of humor because it helps. Of course, if you're not careful with it, everyone knows it can become a coping mechanism.
Hmm.
But when used right, it can certainly help still, right? To be able to find happiness and opportunity in pain. It's like even at work, I tell my teams all the time, um, we intellectually acknowledge that things can be a problem, but we only refer to them as opportunities, right? We're going to make a choice to refer to them as opportunities. And, and so I'm blessed and happy to be able to do that. What's hard in many cases is finding someone who is able to listen and hear you. The we'll call it the activity of listening is one thing. The ability, the empathy, the experience and exposure to be able to truly hear what's being said is a different thing. And coming from a background, tough life background, also doing kind of some of the things I've done my whole life, being in emergency response and seeing, horrible, hard things. And, fire and police are some of the highest divorce rates of any, career that you can have. And, being in fire in my case and in my job now and what we look at and deal with all the time, you can imagine a lot of things that we respond to usually remotely in my case nowadays, right? Because of the type of security work I do,
Hmm.
not as much in person anymore, but it's hard to have those conversations with other people because they're not wired in such a way to be able to hear them. So the media being able to write, the media being able to create music and play it, and others to be able to hear it and resonate with it, even if they're taking your medium and what you presented to them and they're filtering it through and hearing it in their own voice and through their own life experience, that's okay. It's not so much that I'm very personally, it's not so much that I'm interested in them hearing me and my story and what I have to say. It's simply knowing that I was heard and however they heard it was helpful and a blessing to them. And is a means by which God can communicate and speak well into their heart. At the end of the day, it's my belief He can say it better than I can anyway. So, them hearing exactly what I have to say isn't so important to me. But that is the reality of that. That is why I do that. It's both a great expression and a means by which I can communicate with God. A lot of times when I'm writing these stories, no matter which voice I write them through, it's really kind of me speaking to God in my experience with Him. Um, which I mean, not to say it. I mean, it's been hard a
Yeah.
lot of times. I don't have a smooth relationship with God. While I do have a firm belief, it's not been a smooth journey. So it's been a rough road that we walked. But that doesn't mean that I don't continue after Him, right?
Hmm.
And so that medium allows me a place. It's not always as safe a place as you would think. Sometimes you can get lost in your stories and lost in the heart from which you are speaking when you're writing these things or you're creating these songs. And I'll say this: it's a blessing in a few ways. One is again that ability to provide a safe place to commune with God, but also it really does. It slows me down and it breaks those patterns of go go go. It breaks those patterns of energy, boisterousness, comedy. And it gives me a place to realize the fullness, not that those other things can't be an honest part of me, but the fullness that is outside of those of who God has made me to be also. And I think the more that I do that, I find incredible value in it for those reasons, but also because um boy, it puts me in a place where I can hear others well also, right?
Mm.
When I feel like I can have that medium and I can put that out there and I understand that there may be, and you guys may well know, in a lot of cases, you don't get to know how well or if at all what you did actually help someone,
Yep.
right? That may not really land with them until years later, if at all. Um, what you said, but a lot of times the fact that you tried, the fact that you were present, the fact that they too, because they felt like they could resonate with you because you were vulnerable, that
Hmm.
they too felt heard. And there's immense power in that. So really to me, it's the opening of the door. It's the opening of the door of my heart And then the trust and understanding that God uses it just as much in the people around me as he does for me. And so that's where the braveness, and brave only in the sense that I was afraid to begin with, and then I had the courage to do it anyway. So I don't say braveness to give myself kudos. I say braveness to admit that I was afraid, to put it out there for others to see and hear.
Yeah.
And the goal is to be able to bolster others and bring them up.
Well, thank you for putting those into the world, and we're going to share one of those either at the end of this episode or in the next episode. Brad and I are still working out the details with that, but you said something I want to come back to about it's not been hard, but it's and your relationship with God has not been smooth. You know, I think I look at people like your story, and I look at Hugh Cheek, and I look at Rick Burgess, and and Wade Blevins, and me and Brad. We all have had these major, significant losses in our lives, and and we have people who listen to this podcast who may not have a relationship with God,
Mm-hmm.
and they look at it on the outside and they think, well, why are you still doing this God thing? Why are you still doing this whenever you've suffered so much loss?
Yeah.
I know my answer to that, but what would be your response to somebody who may be listening and hearing that, you lost a child and you have had you know, a rough upbringing at times, and it just, you still are clinging to God?
Yeah. I would say a few things to him. One, on a lot of days, I don't know why.
Hmm.
And
I
I've
like
learned
that.
that that's okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing, because I spent years terrified of the fact that I didn't know why and that I didn't have an answer. And that if asked, I there were many years where I hoped nobody would ask me if I was Christian and if I had a walk with God, because I felt like I was scared to death to have to tell them no.
Mm.
And I was scared to death what else I might say with it when I explained it, because it may not be a happy conversation.
Mm.
And the reason why I feared it mostly is because I'm a very high type A type of person. And so for me, the miracle has always been that I believed in God at all. Um, I love facts and figures. I was asked the other day how much I enjoy reading or not. And while I enjoy reading, and I enjoy what goes into fiction and what people are able to create in that type of creative space, I can't read fiction. The reason why I can't read fiction is because as I start to get into it and I see what they've done with a lot of their literary structure and how they're bringing out some of the finer points of the story, I start to then take that, and then my mind wanders. And before I know it, I'm in my own imagination telling myself a whole different story. I made it through page 3, and that book will never be read. But I can read through a whole instruction manual front to back without even blinking. That's just how I'm made, and that usually
I'm glad
doesn't
there are people
lend
like
super
you,
well.
brother. I'm
Hey,
glad there are
man,
people like you, brother.
listen, nerds unite. And and the truth of it is I would have not ever supposed that I would be able to read through the Bible, which I have several times, and still come out a believer.
Hmm.
It doesn't even make sense to me when you say it that way. Here's the next part I'll say. Try him, because as I did so, and I continue to do so, what captured me was the grace that was laid out before me, and before I ever had a chance to earn it. Hence grace, right? But there are these other gifts, even in the hard times, even in sad things. I was been emailing you guys about this podcast through my Gmail account. My old account from I don't know, 20 some years ago is it's called Waking Indifference. And it's so funny. I've had these calls on my life of working with kids since I was a kid, of the indifference of how people treat one another. So kind of implicitly referred to me doing things at the service of other people. Well, it's so that they don't ever have to experience indifference,
Mm.
right? And the old saying, there's a thing that we must fear more in this world than evil people, and that is the indifference of good men.
Mm.
And I truly try to abide in that. And I think that the more that I do that, the more that I see what God has for me and for others relationally. And the fact that he continues to chase after me and to be present and to be available, even something that I have to question and something that I have to be mad at, something that I have to not have to be, but have available to me to be mad at, have available to me to rejoice in, have available to me to bring a testimony about, um, makes it undeniable for me. Right.
Mm.
And I see what he does in others' lives. And when I can let my guard down enough to watch that, then I can reflect in that and see what he's done in my own. When I dwell only on what it is that he's not doing directly for me, I start to lose sight, right? And I start to get upset and what he's taken and why. And then you get into the old question of why would a good God allow bad things? And you start to spin down those rabbit holes. And the crazy thing to me is that he's always been ever present, even through
Mm.
all of it. And I'll tell you one more story in that light about Baltimore was one of the first times I think it was the first time I ever went into the Gunpowder River up north of Baltimore, 30 minutes, probably 45 minutes. Um, there's a little put in up there that you can wade down into. I'd read some reviews about it, said it was a good spot. Hey, let's try it. And there's brown trout in it, and I really wanted to catch one. At that point, I still had never done that before. Thought this is going to be cool. Let's try that out. I had worked overnight as usual, so I got there right at sunup. And as I got to the water, you've never been in the Northeast like that. A lot of those waterways, they kind of got this cool green hue to them.
Hmm.
They're more green than anything. And So it's like this slick water. And it's got kind of this braid in it, not in the sense you would think here, like in a bigger freestone, over like a really big bouldered substrate, but just a light braid just bubbling under the surface. And you would think it was relatively calm water moving at a fairly slow pace. And again, I was very new into fly fishing, so didn't fully understand the power of water yet. Um, and That kind of like you were saying earlier, Brad, like, the way that movies were done back in the day, not now with YouTube, with super cool things and drones flying around and all that. But, the old documentary is like a 90-pound dude who was probably 90 years old and he looked majestic out there. And that line was just awesome, and I was like, that is peaceful and cool and all that, but my energy, that's not, for me, that's not going to work. And until I did it. And then you realize that dude was 90 pounds soaking wet for a reason because this is work. Like he worked off that Jack's biscuit 4,000 calories ago. This is work out here. And surprise, surprise, water is powerful, right? And so as I got down into that bank, um, kind of a big tree here and then the bridge to the road there, and you kind of slide down this embankment. And one thing I had learned from some of the other rivers was to feel your feet. And if your toes are still pointing down, you're still walking down the embankment. So take your time, kind of shuffle, feel your way around. And as I'm going down into that, my left foot was still on the embankment. And so I took it easy. I shuffled my right foot forward and the ball of my foot and my heel kind of leveled out. And I said, okay, I've reached the bottom. And when I went to start to turn, because of where I was, the water kind of had a bit of a little dugout in it where I was walking down, where people had walked down over time. They burned away the embankment, so it's calmer water. And that right foot went out though, and I went to pick my left up to start to turn and face upstream. That calm, lightly braided water was so wildly powerful, I couldn't move my left leg to take a step.
Hmm.
And I thought, this is where to be, and for clarity, when you're up there like that, and this is wintertime, that water was cold, cold. There was a cold fog above it. The mist that
Mm.
was sitting on my face was cold. I was like, this is going to be bad. This is the guy who's done fast water rescue with the fire department for a long time. I kind of have an idea of where this is going. And I thought, man, I worked all night. I've been driving all around. I'm tired. I just wanted to try this out. I wanted some peace, some solace. I wanted an opportunity here in this water. And instead, I'm about to get washed downstream. This is about to go horribly wrong. And so I got angry is what I did. And I
Mm.
tried moving that left leg up into the stream so I could rotate myself, and I couldn't do it. I didn't have the strength to do it. And so I rotated my body upstream and I chose to kind of hop, if you will, and kick my right leg around into the current, dug my feet into that substrate as hard as I could to hold myself against the current because I was immediately starting to get swept away. It was
Wow.
insanely
Hmm.
powerful for as calm as it looked on top. It looked like a farm pond on a calm day. and it just was tearing me up. And I dug in, and once I dug in, a huge amount of energy to do so. And when I thought, okay, I've got this under control. And when I started to walk back upstream, I was determined I was going to fish. I was going to do it by brute force. Nothing here is going to stop me. I can't even imagine why it had to go this way. And I looked up, and there was that tree that I walked past on my way down. There was a branch as big around as my head right next to me. And all I had to do was reach up and grab it and lean on it and its strength. Was
Mm.
there the whole entire time, but I was so busy being mad about my circumstance, I'd forgotten all about it. And this all happened in 3 seconds. The whole thing happened in 3 seconds.
Oh,
And that's
man.
very much what it's like in a lot of cases for me. And, God is in my situation, in my life, has always been, no matter how upset I was, no matter how bad the situation was, no matter how much I could not explain how that situation got so bad so fast. I wouldn't dare right now, without really getting into a big conversation, try to answer the bad things question. But what I'll tell you is that for me, God's always been right there if I'll just slow down enough to look for him instead of trying to do it by brute force or do it my own way.
Mm.
Mm,
And it's so
that's
often that
good.
I don't have the strength to do it another way. And it's when I start trying to force it that I really realize, despite the fact I got myself turned around, how incapable I really was and how much easier it could have been. And that's amazing for me that's always available to us.
I think about, you know, I don't see some people say, how can you still believe in God through hard times? And my response is, how can I not? I mean, when he's the only thing that we have that we can hold on to. I mean, that exactly what you were just saying. I mean, that resonates so much with me too, just to be able to say, he is my strength in these times.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do it myself.
Yeah.
And I love those, those kinds of stories like what you shared, Andrea. Just, I need those kinds of story metaphor, to really go, oh yeah, that makes more sense to me, when I can like attach it to something that's, that's here, that's physical. I mean, I think it's the reason Jesus, would teach in parable,
Mm.
and metaphor is that he's given us something uh, to riff off what you're saying, something for us to hold on to, right? That's, immovable, which is himself. And I believe, I agree wholeheartedly with that. For me, it's, like you said, Brian, how can you not? Like, it's really difficult for me to imagine a world where I've gone through difficult losses without, a
Hmm.
relationship with God.
Yep.
Um, and I find myself asking my question, man, I don't know how people do this that have, no faith or no, no, this is all just, we're all just matter. And when we're gone, we're gone. Like that's for me, it's really hopeless, and there's no purpose in that, it's just, this is the way it is, it's the way it goes. And man, that's really a hard pill to swallow for me.
Hmm.
Um, you sort of answered this, Andre, but we can talk about, um, you've answered it in beauty and truth, but I love stories like that where we've experienced God's truth or his beauty or his goodness. What's maybe another outdoor experience, and it doesn't have to be fly fishing at all. It could be something from your upbringing you look back on or reflect back on. Something on the Mississippi. I think about those
Mm.
must have been some fun experiences. What a vast river, the Mississippi is. But any kind of experience where you can look back and go, man, I really tangibly saw God's truth, his beauty, and his goodness in that experience, especially on the other side, looking back on it.
Yeah. Yeah. If I can, it's kind of a string of kind of touching on a few different stories. And so it's, I think back, kind of like you say, back living on the Missouri and the Mississippi, I would sit on my biological father wasn't really that much into fishing. But one thing I remember when I started getting into it really young, was he took me in this old Blazer that he got and took me out to one of the little local parks out there and sat me down and we went out and tried some inline spinner fishing. And I just thought that was great. And my stepfather and my mother's house lived about 2 hours away in Jefferson City. My dad had moved to Kansas City at the time. And, we would sit out there on a bucket and throw, You take the old chicken liver, you put them in a lady stocking, and you tie them around a treble hook, and send them out there and catfish,
Oh yeah.
and on a slip on a sinker, and and we'd sit out there for hours, man, and we'd bring my little basset hound. His name was Patches, and Patches was about, I don't know, however big a basset hound, 1.5 feet tall, weighed about 95 pounds. His belly hung down. His
Yeah,
belly hung
low center
down.
of gravity. Low
Yeah,
center of gravity.
yeah. Poor little dude, man. His belly hung down 6 inches, and his legs were only 3 inches long. You know what I'm talking about? And so he's kind of like doggy paddling across the ground at all times. But man, we'd go out to the lake, and he would get in the water, and he would chase the ducks in the water. Like, you put him out there, and he's like a jet boat, and it's just the funniest thing. His little ears just flapping behind, and
Was he
you know,
barking the whole
and
time?
yeah, baying. Yep. Yeah. Golly, he's just so funny to see, the him come alive outside like
Man,
that.
I
And
love a basset hound baying. That's
dude,
it's a funny sound, man. I love it.
and as life would continue to go on, and I would do stuff like that, I'd meet friends, and even through high school and stuff, me and a really, really good friend of mine, CR, and we made it, we got to the point where we met over firearms. And so I love squirrel hunting. So I'd run around, whatever, you give it to me. But my favorite was my old Mark One, Ruger Mark One pistol, little 22 pistol,
Oh,
and
okay.
go squirrel hunting with that thing. But started with the old New England arms, 410 steel butt plate. When you're that little, it about knock your shoulder off. But grandfather wouldn't have it any other way. And meanwhile, while I'm out there doing that kind of shooting, goose, quail, duck, all of that, Kansas City tends to be on the migratory line, so it's a fun place for bird hunting.
Oh man,
And
that's awesome.
oh yeah, and but Chris, he grew up with his dad building flintlocks, and so or muzzle loaders rather, all kinds, cap, flintlock, all that. And but he was a target shooter, do competition, so we taught each other the opposite trade. Kind of got him up and moving, and how to really, and he taught me. You're seeing a common thread here, but how to slow down. And at a certain point, we had a story where, and I can send y'all a picture of it. We built a boat out of PVC and tarp and a little bit of 550 cord. I kid you not. And
Nice.
we named it Bill, and we we would
Oh,
motor it around
Bill.
on his little farm. And just it's so funny how it can break. And in each part of this story, there's um, just some really hard life moments going on around each of these. So everything I'm kind of describing were moments of um, rest, of restoration, being reminded who God is and who He is in my life. And as it will go on, so crazy, man. When my wife and I lost our little, my brother and sister lost twins, and
Mm.
they lost their twins, and I didn't know, but when that went on, my brother-in-law Hunter, he went out and was around the Tetons, and which I would end up at last year,
Mm.
actually. But he
Wow.
wound up at the Tetons, and that's where they spread the kiddo's ashes. And well, I never knew this, funny enough, but I'd come to find out once I started fly fishing, and I came back and told him about this new crazy thing I was doing with fly fishing. He would wind up sharing with me that that's what he did when he was out there, and
Mm.
found some dudes who were out there in the area, and he would end up over by the Snake River, and they taught him how to fly fish and fly
Ooh.
cast, and that was kind of his restorative process and healing for him as well. And and then we had that common tie, and look at what it's done for me now, and become this common thread. Of also being restorative and healing for me, not only the activity of it, but the different communities and groups that I get to serve because of it. And I truly do view it that way. It's a privilege I get to serve anybody, who will have me, whether it's a tying night here in Birmingham, just spinning up some bugs and teaching people. It's, Mayfly Project, Skills and Gills, volunteering at Orvis, whatever. And anybody who's ever taught anybody will know that something's embedded in that, is that the teacher tends to get more out of it than the student.
Mm.
Hmm.
And not by way of selfishness, it's just the way it works.
Mm.
When you pour yourself into teaching somebody else, you usually wind up getting more out of it. If nothing else, more than you would have expected, for sure. And in all of those stories, there's this common thread of, yes, outdoors, in a lot of cases, fishing, but uh, but when you stick with it and you continue to search for God in it, you're gonna find him. I did a lot of mountain biking for a long time. I still do. I like to mountain bike to the trail and mountain bike to the river. And a lot of cases, I'll have a guitar with me, and I'll sit, at the creek and just play guitar at the water. A lot of
Mm.
times, I don't even end up throwing a line at all. And I did some racing, mountain biking out in Moab. That's another thing that happened on all this road trip stuff. I wound up um, out there, and I was in Moab, and instead of having a mountain bike this time around, and just like killing myself. If anybody does mountain biking and they know where the Porcupine Rim is, out in Moab, Utah, then you'll understand what kind of biking we were doing. But it was above my pay grade at the time. Let's just say that. And but it was gnarly, and I loved it. But this last year, I wound up there in Moab, and I was like, dang, here's a spot where I'm not going to get to do much fishing. That's kind of our thing, you can bust out a fly rod and get some fishing done and kind of rejuvenate yourself, in an hour. I mean, you can just get after it. Mountain biking is a bit more of a commitment, but I wound up going up to, so there's some county roads you can take up into the forest, and you can go up in the mountains in Moab within about 30 minutes and be at Alpine Lakes.
Oh,
And
wow.
had a beautiful time up there. Just smoked a bunch of brook trout up in this little Alpine lake, and I just sat there, and it was such a different experience. It was so green and lush, and the air was cool, and the fish were plenty. And I thought back to the last time that I was there was with a really good friend named Greg Walden. He took me out there for that race, and that was the only way I had. I didn't have the means to get myself out there. We had a light sponsorship by a local bike shop, but he was such a great friend, and that was such a gift for him to do that with me. But it was hard. It was crushing. And now this time I go out there. We were doing incredibly hard work, and I'd be curious to know what my coworkers think about that. But I would imagine it'd be relatively similar. They were, like I said, this work is not easy work. They were getting killed out there, getting whooped.
Mm.
And then we found some respite in a place like that. And I got to be kind of the teacher and the leader and watch them kind of cut loose and have a great time and see the beauty in the difficulty. And I just feel like it coming full circle like that was such a thing of beauty and a thing of grace.
Mm.
Something that, as you were telling, these different stories, whether it's, growing up fishing or shooting, or, bird hunting, that was something that I've really done for the first time this year.
Yeah.
My dad wasn't, real big into hunting, and certainly not bird hunting at all. My brother was, but that was kind of his thing. I didn't really get into it, but this year, a couple of pals, invited me into some duck hunting, and did that for the first time this year. And just like whether it's deer hunting or any kind of outdoor adventure, I've noticed that, we talk about it. We've talked about it a lot. It's not always just about the fishing. It's not always just about killing ducks. It's not always just about
Yeah.
catching, whatever it is. You look around and you find, oh man, there are these people that I'm sharing life with, that our conversations while we're out in the woods, excuse me, or while we're out on the water, or while we're in the duck boat, or early in the morning where it's dark 30 and we're talking.
Mm.
All of those things, the thing that draws us together and really experiencing the outdoors in community is really what I feel like what most people are really drawn to for the most part. There are obviously times of wonderful solitude that I think we've all experienced. The opportunity to go off alone on a stream and stand there and enjoy the silence. That's good. But for me, when I really look at it, one of the main values I've experienced, and it sounds like you have too, is community within those beautiful places and times, and doing fun things in the outdoors, is having friends around you to remind you that you're not alone, right? Or that,
Mm.
oh yeah, me too. I've experienced that same feeling of loss, or whatever it may be. Man, that's one of the things that draws us to the outdoors is the community around it. And that's especially evident in the fly fishing community. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I love that part of your story early on about getting into fly fishing, it being like, this group of guys. You said this group of guys took me out back into the alley, and I'm like, ooh, this is not well. Or a group of
Yeah.
guys in Boston in the Harbor took me out into the
Yeah.
alley. I was like,
Had
this
a
is going
vision of
down.
Fight Club.
This is going
Yeah.
down for real.
Yeah.
But no, they're out there teaching you a
No,
roll
no.
cast. They're
Yeah.
out there teaching you a roll cast, and it's not just they don't just sell you a fly rod and go, hey, good luck.
Yeah.
They're like, hey man, let's go out and let me show you how to do it. And that's been my experience within the fly fishing community. And I think one of the things that, I love about it, but the outdoors in general, um, people, want to share it with you. They want you to go, hey, let's go hunt together. Let's go do this together. Let's go experience. And it's so much richer in community. And I think we need that. And I think we're made for that. I think we're built for that.
Mm.
And I think that's, echoed in a lot of different things that I listen to and read when it comes to the outdoors.
Yeah.
Well
Yeah.
said.
Very.
Andre, one of the last questions we like to ask our guests is, what is your next adventure?
Yeah. Yeah. My next one is really like fully fledging Skills and Gills. So, really kind of tried to launch that last year. Ended up having to go back out on the road. I was kind of gone more than I was here. And so want to be able to take really take full advantage of that this year. Um, and spend a lot more weekends doing that. I really haven't got to make that what I see that it could be yet.
Hmm.
And so it's still very much in its infancy, and I really want to work to grow that out. Next is my niece and nephew, Ames and Millie Mae, and get them out on the water. And Ames in particular, just super duper excited to be out there and be in the water. And so want to be able to kind of to be able to teach him and build some legacy in there. And get his father Hunter I was talking about earlier, back out there with me. And he is I know people talk about you being a great caster all the time, and Hunter's the same. He's a magnificent fly caster.
They're talking about Brad here, not Brian.
And Brad, yeah, well, yeah, we'll have to put y'all together and do a competition or something, or just watch you do it.
Just sit there and watch.
Just sit there and just watch it. I mean, and then in the hope that I could ever get anything like that, I'm going to be doing my CI, my casting instructor, and
cool.
I'll be doing that with Fly Fishing International. So I want to complete that this year as well.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah, and that is great. Do you need a certain number of hours to like hit that certification?
Yeah, so not as it takes a certain number of hours to get good enough and get all the skills down, and you got to do the teaching. That's a big part of it. It's not just
you said, the communicating the techniques.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I may have some opportunities for you to come to Sanford and teach some of these college students how to do it.
I'd love to.
Oh man, get the old outdoor adventure club.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Truly, I'd love to. Yeah, 100%.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. Well, man, it was a pleasure to meet you at the festival, but even better to sit down over Zoom and just share life together and hear more of your story, Andre. We really appreciate you sitting down and taking some time out of your busy schedule to share your life and your story with us and with our team, and just share that with all of those that take part and listen. Appreciate that, man.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And hey, I wanted to ask you too. I remember hearing several episodes back, you'd never caught a trout in Alabama. Is that still true? Does that still stand?
Yeah, it's still standing.
Still stands.
Yeah. Okay. I hadn't resorted to corn yet, so.
Well, I'm gonna put an offer out there. You come out with me, and I can guarantee you, I'll get you on a trout.
Oh,
on a fly. On a fly.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Hey,
you come out,
Brad,
with me
you heard the man.
Alabama.
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
I mean, this is where one or two are gathered. We are in agreement here.
Man, come on.
Let the church say amen.
Amen. Wow.
Amen again.
Yeah, buddy. I can't promise a whole lot, but I can get you on a trout here in Alabama.
All right.
Well, I'd love the opportunity to come out and fish with you. I'll bring a guitar if you'll have me play with you.
We'll come pick. We'll pick and grin, and maybe we'll catch a fish. That'd be great.
Hey, that sounds like a great day.
Sounds like a party. Maybe we'll have a fire pit. That'd be even better. That'd take it next level right there.
There you go. Hey, we got to get rockets out there if you're going to do all that now. If there's going to be fire by water, it needs to be a rockets burger.
A shore burger. That thing gets bigger and bigger. It's like
every time I see it, it gets bigger.
It's just growing.
It's growing.
Yeah.
Got to dislocate a jaw just to eat the thing.
That's right.
Like a python.
Kidding. Man.
So good, man. We love.
It's been a joy.
Gosh, I love these conversations so much. We discover how how much we have in common with perfect strangers and people that, I
Mm.
mean, let's be real, we don't know you that well, Andre. We
Right.
know you well enough to call you friend and to invite you onto the show, but we
Yeah.
know
Right.
you better. We know you better now because we've heard your story and you've put yourself out there and shared your story with us. And man, it is a blessing to Brian and I know those that are listening. You know, who knows who's listening and how far, you know, the proverbial ripples go in the lake of time. You know, when you cast your stone
Mhm.
of your story, how far those ripples will travel, and who will hear it, and who will need to hear it at just the
Mm.
right time, and to be really encouraged that, you know, it's okay to not know. I love that answer. The older I get, the
Mhm.
more comfortable with that. I don't know,
Mhm.
as my answer, and that's okay. You know, someone may need to hear that very truth through this podcast, and so, man, I really appreciate you sharing those stories and your story and your time. We hope we our whole goal in this is to see people do what you're doing, is writing out your stories, sitting down for a moment, slowing down, reflecting on your experience, to write those stories down and to share those adventures in the place we love to call the storied outdoors. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, it's absolutely my pleasure. And if I can, one last encouragement to everybody: not only tell your stories when you can, the opportunity presents itself, and you're comfortable and you have it on your heart to share it, but listen to the outdoors as well, because they have a lot of stories to tell you, and they may
Mm,
just well feed your heart in a way that you didn't know you needed.
that's great. Thanks a lot, man. We again, every time I look, I pull up and we're hoping to grow. We want to grow this thing.
Mm.
We want to see people this exposed to more people. And if you want to help us do that, one of the ways you can do that is by leaving us a review on iTunes, especially. It just helps us to show up in those charts. So, man, we see the numbers and lots of people are listening, and we're so encouraged and I'm so humbled every time I open up the analytics of our podcast and say, gosh, man, lots of people have listened to this and it's going out there. I'm just asking. I'm not going to grovel, not going to grovel. But man, I would be so blessed if you take time to leave a review. That would help grow this podcast and help others hear these stories and get out there. We don't make anything off this, man. We're just sharing stories and sharing life together, and that's what we want others to benefit from it. And one of those ways you can do that is by leaving a review or a rating on your podcasting platform. So, man, we'd really appreciate that. And thanks to all of those who do listen, man. We are so grateful for your listenership. Our bar was set so low that we were happy if our children listened to this podcast, and that was good enough for us. But so many more have involved themselves in this conversation. We've met so many friends like you, Andre. And so the Lord has used this in a mighty way to just bring me a lot of encouragement through these conversations. So we hope they encourage others to get out there, to build community, to share their stories, to go fish together, man, and grow this in the storied outdoors, right?
Yep.
All right.
Second that.